Hey, Husker fans, welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me, as always, is Janley Gillette. And we're back here for another episode of the podcast, and we've had a lot of things happening since our last episode. We've got Rocco Spindler join the roster after a pretty wild recruitment. Nebraska basketball is back on the bubble and back on track to make the NCAA tournament. The Huskers finally have a new special teams coach, so we're going to discuss all that and kind of take a 90-foot view, a big picture look at the transfer portal. So before we get into that, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. And Danny, how are you doing on this Wednesday morning?
I'm doing good. And before we get started, I would like to address something. I said that if Nebraska basketball, on our last show, I said if they beat Illinois, I would be happy to eat crow. And so here I am making good on my promise and eating crow. Not only did they beat Illinois, but they also had another impressive win against Oregon, which we'll get into. But I would like to eat crow and say that I was wrong, and I'm happy to be wrong. And this team continues to surprise me this season, good or bad. So,
yeah, it has been a little bit of a surprise. They kind of found their identity again, over these past couple of games. So I guess we'll just start with that, with Nebraska basketball, because they do have a game tonight. So against Washington, and that Illinois game, that was the start of something, but beating Oregon. Now, Oregon had lost a couple games in a row, but getting back-to-back quad one victories really has improved this resume. And even though Nebraska is just 4-7 in the Big Ten right now, they are projected to make the NCAA tournament, according to Joe Lunardi of ESPN.com, with his latest bracketology, as Nebraska's the last team in the tournament. So that's kind of where they're at right now. But you look at it, they've got some really impressive wins. They beat Oregon at Oregon. They won at Creighton, beat Illinois, Oregon State. They beat Indiana at home. So they've got a nice resume, and they're going to have a chance to get some more quality wins tonight. I don't think it's going to be one of those. No. Washington, I think they're close to being in the top 100 because the Big Ten is so loaded, but they're 2-8 in the conference, 11-10 overall. Nebraska's a slight favorite, 1.5 point favorite. It's not going to be easy. It's a late tip-off. What is it, 9:30 Central Time, I believe?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, 9:30 Central Time, 7:30 Pacific Time. So, I mean, it's not crazy late for Washington, but that's part of, playing on these trips. They didn't have to really play or deal with that on Sunday against Oregon. It was, not a super late game, but this definitely is going to be a challenge, I think, for this coaching staff, just to have this team ready for, a game time that is kind of well outside their purview.
I think they'll be ready. And they showed that they can handle adversity. And, coming into Thursday's game against Illinois, I thought they were going to get blown out, and I thought they were going to, fail miserably. But they showed resolve on Thursday, and then Sunday, it was the Bryce Williams show. He had 28 points, 10 of 18 shooting to go along with 7 rebounds and 6 assists. And he also won the Big Ten Player of the Week award on Monday, becoming the second Husker to win it multiple times. Shaven Shields did it last time in 2013, 2014. So, I think when you look at, whose stock has improved the most this season, Bryce Williams coming back turned out to be a great decision for all involved. And, he's really been kind of that offensive stabilizer. He's been that veteran presence on a team that's kind of gelling together due to being, formed, I guess, from the transfer portal. And, Bryce Williams continues to play at a high level. And we've talked about NBA prospects. If he continues to play like this, then I could see him, making an impact in the league.
Yeah, I mean, 27.5 points over the last 2 games. He actually was the AP National Player of the Week for college basketball. Juwan Gary, I thought, had a huge game too. I think he had 20-some points against Oregon. I really thought he was a tone setter. I know that Bryce scored more points, but I really thought that, Juwan Gary, with how active he was on defense, just the way that he attacked the basket. I mean, Nebraska shot like 74% from 2-point attempts against an Oregon team that has the leading shot blocker in the Big Ten, and they just neutralized him, and they just wanted it more. I mean, they out rebounded Oregon. I mean, it seemed like they got tough again, and I'm not sure what happened during that stretch where they just lost their edge, but it really felt like, because it's not like they've changed a lot with this defensive scheme, and they've given up, over the last 2 games, they've given up plenty of point attempts, but they've held Oregon and Illinois under 30%. So it'll be interesting to see if that carries over tonight, because as Fred Hoiberg said after the win against Oregon, he said, I told the guys this win, isn't going to matter if we don't get another win on Wednesday night. And he's totally correct about that. Nebraska's got to follow this up and get another win, especially playing a Washington team that's not great. But playing anybody in the Big Ten at home is tough to beat. Like, just ask Michigan, who lost to Minnesota, so and Oregon lost to Minnesota too. So, like, looking at this Washington team, they've got Wilhelm Breidenbach, the former Husker. He should be in the starting lineup. The guy you need to know about, his name is Great Asobor, and he played at Montana State. He followed Danny Sprinkle to Utah State and was the Mountain West Player of the Year last year, I think, or an all-conference player. He's their leading scorer. He's their leading rebounder. He's their leading assister. He's their leader in steals. So he's the guy that kind of makes this train go. 6'8", 250. So we'll see how that matches up. How Nebraska's able to match up with him. But as long as they win this game, looking down the stretch, there's not a lot of easy games. There's a lot of quad one opportunities, but there's not. I don't think you don't have to play like Purdue, or I don't believe they play Michigan State. I could be wrong on that. They probably do play Michigan State now that I'm thinking about it. But I mean, it's a manageable schedule, and I think there's a chance for them to get 9 or 10 Big Ten wins. And if they can do that going into the tournament, I think they're going to be in a pretty good spot to make the NCAA tournament.
Two things I've noticed during the last two games. They've helped a little bit less in terms of double team defense, so that they've kind of gone back to man, and I think that's helped in terms of not getting back in terms of rotations. And then also Juan Gary's going to the paint a little bit more and creating contact instead of just settling for mid-range jumpers, and that's when he's at his best. He gets to the line, he shoots those mid-range jumpers, he creates contact, and so I do think they changed their defensive scheme a little bit in the sense that at times I thought they overhelped, and on Thursday against Illinois, and especially I know Sunday against Oregon, they kind of focused more on man-to-man assignments rather than trying to play help defense, and I think that worked, just if at the very least to affect the shots that were being taken. So I did notice that a little bit in terms of strategy, but whatever they're doing defensively, it's not perfect, but it's much better than what it was, and I'd say keep it rolling.
Yeah, for sure. It's I just think it's the intensity. They're closing out harder. They're not getting beat to the bucket as more. They're just playing harder, and so hopefully that can continue tonight. Yep. Again, the tip off 9:30 Central Time, Big Ten Network. So it's going to be a late one. Nebraska's a 1.5 point favorite, but if they can get 2 games from this West Coast road trip, that would be huge for.
Good thing basketball is now 4 quarters with a 10:30 tip off, because that would be late. And then one more thing I just wanted to say: they always seem to play their best basketball around this time of year, late January, early February. They've turned it on the last 2 years at this time, so maybe it's more that Hoiberg late season magic. If so, I'm all here for it.
For sure. Well, I also think, we should never, these past couple of games, I think they show again, why Fred Hoiberg is such a valuable asset to this program. And there's going to be times where, they look not great, and there may be down seasons, but Fred Hoiberg is one of the best coaches in the Big Ten, and Nebraska's lucky to have him. So
it almost seems like we should play a ranked team every single game, because we seem to get up for those games.
So all right, let's flip over to Rocco Spindler. And this was, happened on Sunday. So it's been a couple of days, but we want to really break it down. It looked like Virginia was going to get him, and then Nebraska swooped in late. Matt Rule, the 1890. This definitely was. They probably had to pay over $1 million to get his commitment. But one of the top offensive guards in the portal. Played a ton of snaps last year, was graded really well in pass blocking and run blocking, 23 starts. So Rocco Spindler, what does he bring to the offensive line? What does this mean for the Huskers next season?
He brings experience. And he brings championship and winning pedigree. And I think that's important if you want to continue to build that winning culture. He brings stability. He also allows you to kind of have that depth on the offensive line. Although let's not make a mistake here. He's not a depth piece. He is very, very much a starter. But now he gives you that flexibility to kind of, move a guy around or see who you have on the line. And he is a tremendous get for what has been a fantastic transfer portal class. And, we kept saying both that we need one more lineman, we need one more guy. We would love another lineman, and we got him in Rocco Spindler. And I like that we have two linemen, one more established in Spindler, and then one with a lot of potential in Elijah Pritchett. So I like kind of that duality there. So I love Spindler. I love his experience. I love what he brings to the table. Notre Dame always seems to churn out good offensive linemen, so I like that as well. And this was a fantastic get for Nebraska. And people are always concerned about the money, and they say, "Oh, it's not your money to be worried about." But hey, just throw the bag at him, and they did. And I think, again, I think this is a case of Matt Rule shifting his strategy from just high school recruiting to focusing a lot on the transfer portal and learning that if you don't play the NIL game, you're going to get left behind. And so it was good for Nebraska to be able to seal the deal here.
Definitely. I think this was definitely a big recruitment, and I kind of mentioned why, but it just really solidifies the offensive line because you can, allow Justin Evans now to play center, which I think has been the plan all along.
I like him, yeah.
Matt Rule has said that that's his best position, and so I really don't see anybody unseating him. I know he mentioned some other guys there, but I think he's going to win that job. I think Rocco's going to be the right guard. I think they should put him in a right guard. That's his best position. He's a big, powerful dude. And then I think you let the other guys, compete at the left guard spot, whether that's Henry Leftoski. I know you're not going to like this, but Turner Corcoran could be in the mix, if he's healthy. Because, look, Henry Leftoski's coming off off-season surgery too. So, he's not healthy. So, whether it's Leftoski, to be honest, if Turner Corcoran's healthy, I think he's the best man for that job. Like no doubt about it. He started 34 games in his career. Leftoski started 11 last year, but I think if he can find a way to get healthy, I think he could win that starting job. I have no question about it. It's just whether he can, stay healthy, but that's going to be a question for Leftoski too. And then, maybe Grant Bricks or Gibson Pyle can work their way, into the mix. But I think that gives you a lot more depth. I'm hoping that maybe Grant Bricks can play tackle because this team needs another tackle. There's not enough depth on this offensive line right now because it's so we got Gatula and Pritchett, but if one of those guys goes down, who's playing? There's not really a reliable answer there, and I don't know if it would be Grant Bricks or somebody else, but they still need to try to find a tackle in the spring portal. And I know that's going to be tough, and so you might be in a situation where maybe you're hoping that Teddy Prochazka can be healthy and he can be your swing tackle. So I think there's a reason those guys are still on the roster, and if they're healthy, they may be on the 105-man roster for the 2025 season.
And I don't hate Prochazka, but I just feel like that whole entire collection of sentences you just said, we've said that for, 4 years now? So I don't know. If he's healthy, I want him on the roster, but he can't be counted on just solely due to his health, I think. So we'll see.
Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I just think Nebraska's in that situation where, if those guys are healthy, that might be the best option. But, Leftoski did play quite a bit last year, and I do think that Gibson Pyle or, Grant Bricks could start there. But I don't know if
to see the younger guys start there, honestly. I don't know.
Yeah, it just depends if they're, I think you just compete it out and you let the best guy win. And if it's one of those guys, then great. If not, but yeah, it would be ideal if a Gibson Pyle could win that job. Or I'm still interested to see what they're going to do with Grant Bricks, if he's going to be a guard or if he's going to be a tackle, because, Matt Rule last year before the season said he was a tackle, but then when it got to be, releasing the depth chart, they had him at guard. So I've said both. I think it could be a great guard. I wonder about him being a tackle. I'm just not sure if he's, long enough to do it, but I haven't seen him really play a whole lot, so I can't say for sure one way or another. But that's one thing that I'm watching, because I think that's going to, really give us a clue of where the starting five is going to end up.
I agree, and we're not going to be able to see, a hypothetical starting five because there's no spring game. There's going to be no spring game this year, and I know a lot of fans were upset about that, and I know that it's a chance for fans to see a Huskers type game atmosphere at an affordable price. So I understand why they're upset. I was kind of disappointed just because I like to see the team and stuff. But Matt Rule said Saturday he wasn't planning on having a spring game, so he said to protect the roster. So that was interesting to me because I think that's a trend we're going to see throughout college football. And I do wonder, does that allow these players who may not make the roster to get opportunities and one last chance to show what they can do? But at the same time, I kind of do want to protect that roster a little bit because, I do think that the dollar is king, and any chance you can to kind of stash away players, it's tough because it may not be for their benefit, but it's for the benefit of the program. It's a fine line,
Yeah, I mean, I hear what Matt Rule said. I wish he wouldn't have said that. I didn't like the way that it came off, and
I mean, it's the reality of things.
I mean, I agree in the sense, but I think that I also kind of think he's wrong. Like, I don't think that teams know who your players are. I don't think that like there's going to be a spring game and they're going to suddenly turn this on and be like, oh, this guy was good, we're going to tamper with him now. Like, I think there's already players on Nebraska's roster who they're targeting. So, I mean, I get what he's saying, but I just think he's overblowing things, which he does tend to do sometimes. I mean, like he gets a little dramatic about things. And so, I mean, if you want to say it's because of injury or it's just you don't have very many, I think it's more due to not having as many players on the roster and maybe some injuries. But like, I really don't think you're protecting the roster not having a spring game. That's just my honest opinion.
I mean, I do think you are to some degree, just because for some of the guys that maybe get a chance, like second year players who don't necessarily have tape that you can see, I do think in that respect, you are protecting it a little bit. I am, like I said, I am bummed about no spring game, but at the same time, I totally get it. Injuries were a big part of the spring game last year, Blyhill and Demetrius Bell, so I get that as well. And we'll have to see if they have some sort of like fan practice or something in August or whatever. But I was looking forward to seeing this roster kind of shake out, but we'll just have to wait till August.
Yeah, and to be honest, that was a huge recruiting weekend, and I think the fans and all that was a big selling point. So to be honest, like I feel like you're losing. I think it's a negative on the recruiting aspect of it. So on a net scale, I think it's a negative for Nebraska. I think they're losing something by getting rid of the spring game recruiting wise, and I don't think they're protecting their roster, just to be honest. So I think it's a mistake, but I mean, I understand it, but I do think that it is going to hurt the program a little bit.
I mean, at the end of the day, they're going to be able to recruit, and we've already managed to get talented players coming in. I think people and recruits are seeing what Nebraska can do on the field. And I think honestly, this might give Matt Rule a little bit more time to recruit on the road potentially. So I do understand that aspect of it, but I think by and large, Nebraska will still be strong in recruiting.
My only thing is that a lot of these, with the way these recruits work now, they're not going to games really. I mean, they're making decisions before games. Some of these guys, especially with the way Nebraska's recruited some, where they like their first time on campus was just this past weekend. So like, I don't think it's that big of a deal. And maybe they'll have fans in the stands, which will essentially serve the same thing. So, not having it on TV isn't that big of a deal. But if they have something in the stadium, with players and the fan support, because I do think the fan support is a big selling point for this program. So I think it is a pretty amazing thing to see how many fans come out for like the spring game and stuff. So if they have some type of event, for fans, which I do think they've said that they will, it's just not going to be, on TV. So maybe it won't be that big of a deal, but I don't know. It's just, I don't think it's whatever they want to do. I don't think it's going to be that big of a deal either way. So.
Well, I think it puts more emphasis on these junior days, like the one we had last weekend. I do think it gives us a chance to see, like these junior days give us a chance to see some of the top, juniors in the country. We had a lot of good junior day visitors this past weekend. So Jordan Campbell is a guy that stuck out to me, the linebacker from Northwestern. So Nebraska is getting a lot of quality talent, and they made the top 7, I believe it was, last night for 4-star tight end Lincoln Watkins. So, I mean, there is movement there. We'll see what happens with Watkins, but big kid, big time playmaker. Nebraska had him for an in-home visit at the end of January, so to have the Huskers in his top 7 was certainly encouraging.
All righty, let's shift over to the other big news that happened this weekend, which was the hiring of Mike Ekeler from Tennessee. I guess that happened on Monday, excuse me. And so, this was a guy that was mentioned as soon as, Ed Foley was fired. He was mentioned by some pretty prominent Nebraska media members, but it was reported that he was going to stay with Tennessee. So I'm not sure exactly what happened, but I mean, judging by Matt Rule's press conference last week, he didn't sound like they were close to making a hire. So I don't know if they, came back to Ekeler and made a late push. I'm not really sure how they got it done, but what's the impact of, hiring Mike Ekeler away from Tennessee? Will he finally fix the Nebraska special teams?
Well, I feel like he will, because that's sort of his calling card, right? His calling card was, returning and, Tennessee's ranked either first or second in punt return average in the 3 seasons that he was there. Nebraska, I counted some numbers. Yes, the other day, excuse me, they had 23 kick return yards on the season and 73 punt return yards. So, Mike Ekeler will have players returning kickoffs, and I know that drove a lot of people crazy. Drove me crazy that they couldn't see return kickoffs, and so. He, in addition to his previous work with Nebraska, he's also made stops at Indiana, USC, Georgia, and North Carolina. So he has a well-versed coaching background. I don't think he will be in a recruiting role, but he'll certainly elevate the special teams unit, especially when you look at some of the talent that we could have at kicker, punt returner. I think it's a good match for program and coach.
Yeah, it's he's from Nebraska. Obviously, he's coached at Nebraska before. It's interesting because Matt Rule said this wasn't going to be a recruiting position, but Mike Ekeler is known as a pretty strong recruiter. So we'll see if he sticks with that or not. It's just I think it means that it's not going to be a position that's emphasized a lot on the recruiting trail. I mean, Ed Foley
did. I took it, yeah.
Ed Foley did recruit. I mean, it's not like he didn't recruit, but he wasn't like the primary recruiter for a lot of guys. I guess is the. But at any rate. I mean, one thing that stands out to me with Mike Ekeler in Nebraska last year, and I believe I read this number from Steve Sipples, and I haven't double checked it, and hopefully I'm correct. But I think it was Nebraska had 10 kicks blocked last year. I think
you're correct with that number because I double checked on that as well. You're correct.
Yeah, and that's insane. And in Mike Ekeler's, I think 4 seasons with Tennessee, they had 1 kick blocked, and his teams blocked 8 kicks. So it would be nice to see that trend. Be reversed where Nebraska's the one blocking like they used to. I mean, I remember in the Pelini era, they used to get some blocks and they used to be good on special teams. And, like good teams are good on special teams. Like you look at almost every successful team, like you'll see a team that for the most part can execute in the kicking game. And that's just, they needed to get a coach like this. And I mean, we talked about some other guys and threw some names out there, but I'm glad that they got a proven guy who loves Nebraska, who's been with this program. And, you get a coach who also coached outside linebackers on a team that made the college football playoff. So, that tells you something. I think a lot of these, like with Rocco Spindler, Mike Ekeler, I think that they see how close Nebraska is. And I think that's part of the reason why Nebraska has made a push for these guys, because you look at last season and I know that they won 7 games, but they had the national champions on the ropes in their stadium. They should have beat Iowa, if we don't piss that game away, if Isaiah Nair and Raiola don't drop the ball, and they should have beat Illinois. So, if they win those 3 games, they probably make the college football playoff. Literally 3 possessions away from being in the conversation to make the playoff, and that was last season. So, Nebraska is very close to making this happen, and so I applaud these moves. I think it's a great time. You got the quarterback. If you're not going to go all in right now with Dylan Raiola, when are you going to do it?
According to James Williams, Nebraska may be so far away that they'll never be able to do it because they don't have enough defensive talent. And but anyway, we can get to that in a second. But I think you're right with Rocco Spindler, Mike Ekeler. These are college football guys, coach, player. They know what it takes to win. They saw what it takes to win. And for me, they're ponying up the money, and that was big to me because I think that's a reversal of what Matt Rule has done in prior years, but he sees what it takes to win, and now he's changing his strategy, kind of like Fred Hoiberg did with the transfer portal in basketball, and he's adapting, and I think that's important. And Mike Ekeler, fantastic hire. I was very happy with it. I know fans were getting antsy. We were getting antsy too about a special teams coach, but alas, we have one.
Yeah, and I don't think it's wrong to say that this is a home run hire. I think that this is an absolutely a home run hire. I said this when I wrote about it, like that term's overused, home run hire, but this is actually a home run hire. Like that's not, hyperbole in any way. Like this is a hyperbole. This is a home run hire, and he's gonna fix special teams. Like I have no doubt about it. So yeah, we can talk about James Williams' comments, which were kind of weird. He mentioned basically, he said that Tony White would be able to call different defenses because Florida State has more defensive back talent or more linebacker talent or whatever, which, is a weird thing to say, I think, for a former walk-on who was given his opportunity, by Nebraska. But what do you think about? You seem pretty fired up about these James Williams comments, so I'll let you have.
Yeah, because he's Tony White has the ability to adapt. No, he doesn't. It's why we lost to Illinois, UCLA, Iowa. Like he didn't adapt at all. He doesn't have multiple schemes, and I don't think it was Matt Rule's fault. Matt Rule brought in Phil Snow because Tony White wasn't getting the job done. He ran the same damn 3-3-5 defense the first 2 seasons, and teams figured it out. So miss me with that adaptive scheme BS. I'm sorry. It's just crazy. Like just to say that Nebraska had, Florida State had more talent on defense and Nebraska had less. I mean, don't bite the hand that feeds you. If Nebraska had more talent on defense, you wouldn't be playing. So what is it, James? I mean, what is it?
And I mean, it's Florida State went 2-10 last year. They do recruit pretty well. I mean, I get what he's trying to say, I guess, but not. It just wasn't a good look, and I just don't really see
the adaptability of Tony White cracked me up. I mean, that stuck out to me the most. Like he clearly didn't adapt, and teams figured it out. Like on a more serious note, like Illinois figured it out, UCLA figured it out. I'm trying to think of their other ones. Iowa figured it out, and so Tony White, unless he kind of shifts what he does completely, he doesn't adapt. And I don't think you bring in Phil Snow if you think your defense is good.
And it's interesting when Rule was talking about Dason McCullough and some of these guys, he talked about them using that they weren't going to play the same 3-3-5, that they were going to do 3 and 4 man looks, and I think we're going to see a lot more 4-man fronts this year, and that's just teams 3-4. That's the thing is like. You see a lot of 3-4 teams that are 3-4 teams, but you rarely see any team that's like a 3-4 when it becomes nickel or dime situations. So, and Nebraska sometimes was trying to do that, and which is fine. But I think I think that they're going to upgrade I think they did upgrade with John Butler. So that's my final point on that part of it.
And I feel like they're gonna, and I feel like they've upgraded with personnel too. I mean, I'm excited for McCullough. I'm excited for the younger guys like Shavers and McGahee, and I'm excited for the secondary. I think we made some big upgrades in the secondary, and that's not a knock to the previous players that were there because I feel like Tommy Hill was a fantastic player. The injury bug unfortunately bit him. But I feel like we added a lot of depth in the corner room, a lot of depth in the linebacker room. Defensive line is a position I'm excited to see. So, I mean, I don't know. Those comments were just crazy to me. I mean, maybe he didn't mean for them to come off like that, but again, the adaptability of Tony White was absolutely crazy to me. That was a very bold statement. You want to talk about hot takes? That was a scorching one.
Yeah, and I wonder if some of that came from Tony White himself. If he's been, talking down the Huskers a bit. Yeah. It just seems like I'm not sure James Williams comes up with that himself. You know what I mean? But anyway,
no. I mean, he doesn't strike me as a guy that would say something like that. So I wonder if or maybe even T Knight had something to do with that. But anyway, I mean, I don't know.
But I did get I want to take a final look now at this transfer portal class, which there's different rankings, but according to 24/7 Sports, this is the number one class in the transfer portal of the Big Ten. So I'm just to put that connotation on it. But looking at it, some of the guys that they lost, I mean, on the defensive line, lost James Williams, Jamari Butler, obviously Nash and tied to the NFL, but you add Williams Noweri, who I think is definitely a guy that's going to step in, start right away. Jalen George, a guy that not a lot of people are talking about, but I think is going to be a fine replacement for Jamari Butler. And then, like you talk about losing James Williams, well, they're going to play Dason McCullough as an edge rusher. So, they've got multiple pass rushers there. Willis McGahee's going to come in and be a pass rusher this year. Dawson Merritt could be a pass rusher. You add Marcus Watson Trent at linebacker to go along with Christian Jones, Merritt. Did they get was it Javin Wright that came back?
Yeah, they did. Yep.
Yes, Javin Wright. I mean, they are freaking loaded at linebacker. It's, McGahee, Shaver. I didn't even mention McGahee and Shavers. The fact that I'm talking about them being loaded at linebacker.
I totally forgot about Wright. So there you go.
before getting to maybe their two most promising players. So, I mean, you add Jones and Dawson Merritt, McGahee, Shavers, then you got Watson Trent and Javin Wright. That's a loaded linebacking core. Plus Dason McCullough, who can play linebacker too. Just sounds like he's going to play more edge. So I'm very excited about, the front seven. Riley Van Poppel's going to have a big season. There's no doubt about that. He's going to have to really step up. And I wouldn't mind them getting a defensive tackle, but just doesn't seem like that's really in the cards. And, I like also what they've done in the secondary. I wish that Groves Killebrew would have stuck around. I'm not sure what happened there. It sounded like he showed up and everybody realized it wasn't a great fit, so I'm not sure what's up there. I don't know what
happened there. It was really quick too.
Yeah, it was like he enrolled at the school and was like, "No, dog, I'm out. I got to get back to Arizona." And they were like, "Well, we don't have anybody to replace you, so come on back." At any rate, I do think Andrew Marshall is going to be a stud who is going to help on special teams, and then Jameer Khan is another veteran type guy. They got Bly Hill back. He'll be healthy. Sayer Wright. Yep. Yeah. I think Wright and Marshall are going to be your starters. And then I like these young guys too. I mean, Donovan Jones played pretty well in that Boston College game. And I think Amari Sanders, Larry Tarver, they have a lot of depth there. And I think it's, you've got Hartzog, Buford at safety, Deshaun Singleton back. So, I mean, really, there's not yes, they could use a Nash Hutmaker 330-pound defensive tackle type. But outside of that, they really don't have a glaring need on this defense. And if they play more four-man fronts, they're not going to need that player as much anyway.
Right. And, I also like, some of the less talked about players, I'll just say. For example, Mississippi State transfer Gabe Moore. I know he doesn't have a lot of stats, and I know he redshirted, during his time with the Bulldogs, but he does have potential. 6'4", 250-pound defensive lineman. So I'm curious to see what they can get out of him. I really am, because I think he could be a special player. It's all about opportunities, and I think Moore is a guy that I'm definitely kind of. He's not one of my X factor transfer portal players, but I think if Nebraska can develop him correctly under Terry Braden, who is currently at the Super Bowl, I think that could be something special.
Yeah, I mean, and Moore, he's a former edge rusher. I think he's now 6'4", 290 or something. So, I mean, this is a guy who's going to be able to give you some snaps inside. And he last year was expected to be, factoring on the two deep, Mississippi State. And I think he got an injury early in the season. And then I'm not sure exactly why he didn't play or whatever. He shut himself down early in the year and then ended up transferring. So, he does have, I think, a lot of upside. And, this is a really, I said it before, but this is a really solid class. I mean, Pritchett, to add two offensive linemen that started, double-digit games for Notre Dame and Alabama. And I get that Pritchett didn't grade out as well as Spindler, and he's got some work to do. But I mean, Donovan Raiola did pretty well, I think, in the development of Bryce Benhart, and there's a lot more to work with in Elijah Pritchett. I mean, the dude was a 5-star for a reason. He's got everything that you could possibly want, in that role, in that clay to mold. And so it'll be interesting to see what Nebraska can get out of him. But I feel like they've got at least, I mean, if you go start, say Latovsky ends up being your starter or Corcoran, whichever one of those guys, you're starting somebody, your bare minimum starter, your worst starter is an 11-game career starter for Nebraska. That's your worst offensive lineman. And if he's not starting, then you've got like a 34-game starter in Turner Corcoran. And then, and then if not, and if those guys don't start, it's because some young, talented guys beat them out. And if you beat out guys that have started a combined 45 career games, then you know what? You probably deserve that job. So I feel like Nebraska's offensive line compared to last year's in a way better spot.
I agree. And you take a look at some of the younger talent at the wide receiver position, just from the transfer portal, Harley Gilmore, Isaiah Hunter. I mean, Hunter, was impactful for California last year. Gilmore, he is explosive and he can show flashes of being a playmaker. And when you combine that with the young talent and Mosey and Mills, and then the talent already here and Barney, that's a really, really solid wide receiver group too.
Yeah, and we've talked about it. I mean, how many times have we talked about, have you said that gotta help your quarterback? You have to help your quarterback. Yep. Well, you get him some wide receivers, you get him some offensive line help. That's how you help your quarterback. You get a dude like Rocco Spindler who didn't allow, I don't think, a sack last year. That's how you help your quarterback. You know what I mean? And so I feel like they did that. So I do think that they're probably going to try to look to maybe add a running back or maybe a defensive tackle or offensive tackle in the spring portal. But for the most part, this roster is set. I mean, not set because they're 22 guys over the limit. So some guys are going to have to get off this team before the season starts. But I like where they're at, man. I really like where this team is at. And I know everybody's sick of, Nebraska offseason champs and all that stuff. And it feels like that again. But I really think that this time is different.
It does feel like that again, but at the same time, we're coming off a bowl victory and forward progress, not like a 4-8, 5-7 season again. So it does feel a little
quarterback
bit time around, and a quarterback who, I think I was looking at pictures of him the other day because he was with Phil Simpson down in Florida, and he's lost a little bit of weight. So I think some of that baby fat that so many Huskers fans grilled him for, I think a lot of that is going to be gone as well.
Yeah, and that's who cares, man? He can throw the ball.
I mean,
let's not Luka Doncic the situation.
Oh, what a bad trade that was! I don't know. I mean, I don't think Dallas won that one at all, but that's just me.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see. It's a big bet though, because
it is.
I mean, I don't know. It's really interesting because if you listen to Brian Windhorst talk about it, and he talks about how they didn't want to pay him the $330 million. It makes it. I can understand it a little bit more, but to me, yeah, you don't ever. If you're giving up the best player in a trade, then I think you lost the trade. So Luka's got to deliver on that. But the Mavericks also gave him a pretty big motivational tool of like, we think you're literally not good enough, and we didn't even get that much for you. So I don't know, weird trade.
The Mavericks are starting to refund season tickets. I just saw this the other day from a reliable reporter. They're starting to refund these tickets. Yeah.
Did you see they had like a mock burial?
It's
like. Yeah. Anyway,
they know they messed up. The Mavericks know that was a bad trade.
Yeah, but that's the thing. The owners don't. Mark Cuban doesn't own the. I mean, he's a minority owner anymore, but he doesn't have the majority share. And the new owners just want to build a casino. And I don't think they care if the team is good or bad. They just want to build a casino, and that's why ownership in professional sports really does matter. Because some owners want to win. And some owners want to win and make money. Nobody doesn't want to make money, but there's some owners that actually prioritize winning, and they've realized if you win, you're going to make money anyways. And then some owners just look at it as like a tax write-off, and they don't care. And those are the franchises.
The Boston Red Sox.
Yeah. I mean, for real. If Bob Kraft had never bought the Patriots, they probably wouldn't have ever won a Super Bowl. That's just 100% fact, in my opinion.
Well, we'll see what this new era of Bob Kraft brings, because I don't like it so far. But the Super Bowl winning Bob Kraft, who kept things together, was good. But we'll see. We'll see.
Sorry, we've gone on a tangent, guys. We're at the end of the episode. So, but I was watching the two Bills, the 30 for 30. That one's really good. So anyway, but it's just in terms of Nebraska, I get this feeling that they are close, and I know I've said that a million times, and I probably sound like I'm crazy. But this team is so close to pushing into playoff contention. And, I mean, the schedule's there for the taking this year. And, with Raiola's got to take a big leap, but with all these receivers and offensive line, everything is in place for this team to, win 8 to 10 games.
New faces, a lot of the fifth-year guys have left the program, and I think that's just helpful in terms of building a culture. Not to say that those guys were bad by any stretch of the imagination, but just getting some new guys in, starting new traditions, new winning habits, and for this group, a bowl game was their first big step and a bowl game win at that. So, I think they have something to build off of, and they know what it takes to at least get to a bowl game. And honestly, the 2025 schedule is pretty favorable. So this could be a big step for them to take over this next year.
It could be, and yeah, it's this is Dylan Raiola's team now. I mean, from a player perspective, this is his team. He's leading off-season workouts, and we'll see where this team goes. So we'll wrap it up there, you guys. Thanks for joining us for another episode. Please make sure that you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comments section, and as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.